I want to start today by asking you to just imagine something for a second. You're sitting exactly where you are right now listening to this, but suddenly no one can see you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't mean you're like just being ignored. I mean you are entirely physically invisible. What changes? Do you stay exactly as you are, bound by the same rules and morals, or do you shift?
Right, and you breaks the rules.
Exactly. That tension, that exact breaking point of human morality is this central question driving this incredible debut English language novel we are doing a deep dive into today. It's called The Man Who Vanished.
It's such a heavy premise, honestly, because it immediately forces you to confront how much of your own behavior is just performative.
Yeah.
Like, we tend to associate the concept of invisibility with, I don't know, science fiction or classic monster movies. But what we're looking at here is a severe, very dark psychological exploration.
It's not a comic book?
No, not at all. It treats invisibility not as some scientific anomaly, but as the ultimate stress test for the human soul.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the way the invisibility is triggered, it kind of sets the entire philosophical tone of the book. We aren't dealing with, like, a lab experiment gone wrong here.
Right, no radioactive spiders.
Right. The story actually starts deep within Egypt, where our protagonist unearths and eats what the text describes as a forbidden fruit that's been buried for centuries. And the physical effect is immediate. They just vanish from sight.
But the psychological effect is what's really terrifying.
Yeah, exactly, because while they vanish from sight, they do not vanish from consequence.
Which is really the core mechanism of the novel's conflict, right? Eating a forbidden fruit, that carries so much obvious mythological weight.
Oh, for sure.
It implies a choice to bite into knowledge or power that mortals just aren't supposed to have. When the protagonist becomes invisible, the immediate psychological break happens because the fundamental feedback loop of human existence is severed.
What do you mean by feedback loop?
Well, we follow rules, we display empathy, we adhere to social contracts, largely because we are observed. We exist in a community.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you completely remove the physical body from the visual field, you completely remove the possibility of social accountability.
It actually really makes me think of the architecture of anonymous internet forums.
Oh, that's a great point.
Like, when identity is completely detached from a person's words, accountability just evaporates. People routinely say and do things online that they would never, ever dream of doing if they were standing physically in front of you.
Right, the keyboard warrior effect.
Yeah, exactly. So take that exact psychological shift, that sudden, intoxicating lack of boundaries, and apply it to a physical human being walking unrestricted through a major city.
That analogy actually highlights the huge escalation present in the book. Because an internet troll can inflict emotional damage, sure, but this protagonist has unparalleled physical access to the real world. They can walk through restricted doors, bypass security, to stand in the corner of a room while global conspiracies are being discussed, or invade the most intimate spaces of their enemies. They basically start navigating criminal networks and unearthing lost truths.
But doesn't that risk, falling right into the trap of a standard superhero origin story?
How so?
Well, the protagonist gets a unique power and immediately decides to take down the criminal underworld. We've seen that narrative arc, like, a million times.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But what's fascinating here is that the novel actively subverts that trope. The author explicitly frames this condition not as a superpower, but as a profound temptation that rots into a curse.
A curse, wow.
Yeah. The initial rush of absolute freedom, the ability to act as a hidden hand of justice, is actually a trap. Liberation quickly mutates into compulsion.
So they can't stop.
Exactly. The protagonist doesn't just want to stop criminals anymore. They develop a pathological need to exert power simply because they can. The control they think they have over their new state actually masks a mind slipping completely out of control.
Man, there's a line from the text regarding this downward spiral that really stuck with me. It says, "Some hungers leave scars you cannot see."
That is such a good line.
Right. It implies this horrific trade-off. The protagonist's physical body is pristine. It can't be attacked or bruised because literally no one can find it. But their psyche is sustaining massive permanent damage from the paranoia and just the isolation of their own actions.
Yeah, the greatest danger to this character is never the external enemies pursuing them. The external plot is an international thriller, but the internal plot is pure survival horror.
That's a great way to put it.
As their curiosity hardens into obsession, their morality fractures. They are fighting a losing battle against the darkness awakening within themselves.
Which brings up a really fascinating structural problem. I was reading through the notes we have on this and thinking from a purely mechanical perspective. If you are the author, how do you stage a scene?
What do you mean?
Well, if the protagonist is a ghost, how do you convey tension or even a physical presence in a room without it just feeling like floating, disembodied dialogue?
Hmm.
You can't describe a shadow on the wall or a reflection in a mirror or the glint of a weapon.
Oh, right. You have to fundamentally rewire how the reader experiences the environment.
Exactly.
And since the visual element is completely erased, the author Ghassan Jawar shifts the narrative weight onto a different sense entirely, which is scent.
A scent.
Yeah. Perfume, sweat, the atmospheric smell of room scent becomes the primary narrative device used to shape tension and interaction.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that is a brilliant workaround. Smell bypasses the logical brain completely.
Totally.
It hits the emotional center without any conscious visual processing. Like a specific cologne or the smell of rain on hot pavement can violently transport you back to a childhood memory before you even realize what's happening.
And if you look at the mechanics of why scent works so effectively for a thriller, it's because it is inherently invasive. Scent crosses physical boundaries invisibly, mirroring the protagonist's own state of being.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, a scent enters a room before a person does, and it lingers long after they have left.
When you frame it like that, it's incredibly unsettling. You don't see the unseen watcher in the corner of your office, but you suddenly smell the faint trace of their environment or a specific fragrance invading your personal space.
Right. It violates the boundaries of the other characters without their consent. They are literally breathing in the presence of the protagonist.
That is so creepy.
It really is. Jawar uses this to build a profoundly claustrophobic tension. The reader is forced to pay intense attention to these invisible details, which elevates the story from a simple, action-oriented spy novel into a deeply nuanced sensory experience. The invisible becomes terrifyingly tangible.
So what does this all mean when we look at the author himself? Because that invisible transmission, the way a scent travels through the air unseen but carries this massive, undeniable impact, is actually a perfect parallel to the author's real-life background.
Oh yeah, this is wild.
Because Ghassan Jawar isn't just an Arab writer and poet. Alongside a history of writing satire and short stories, his professional background is in telecommunications and digital systems.
It's a remarkable juxtaposition.
It really is. You have someone whose entire professional life is built around the architecture of invisible data. A telecom engineer, a literal architect of unseen networks, writing a poetic, dark noir thriller about physical invisibility.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, when you look at what telecommunications actually is at its core, it is the modern architecture of surveillance and connectivity.
Yeah, exactly.
Telecom systems are unseen forces shaping every single aspect of modern life. Data moves invisibly all around us, tracking our locations, defining our habits, connecting our communications. Jawar is taking a highly technical, systematic understanding of how invisible systems observe and control the world, and he's translating that onto a flesh and blood protagonist.
So the protagonist essentially embodies the modern telecom grid. They are the unseen observer, hovering in the background, collecting data, wielding power without ever stepping into the light.
That technical background gives the book a highly relevant, very modern lens. But what keeps it from reading like a sterile technical manual is his foundation as a poet.
Right, he's balancing those two worlds.
Exactly. Jawar balances that systematic understanding of surveillance with a deeply human, philosophical approach. His writing style is noted for moving really fluidly between gentle introspection and very sharp, biting critique.
To it.
Oh, totally.
We have a breakdown of the editorial reviews here, and they seem to be pulling the book in 3 entirely different directions.
The reception is fascinating because it proves the book is operating on multiple levels simultaneously. The reviews generally fall into 3 distinct camps.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first camp praises it purely as psychological suspense, calling it a masterful dive into the human mind and morality.
And then the second camp zeroes in on the espionage and thriller elements. They focus on the secret missions, the international conspiracies, and call it an edge-of-your-seat ride through shadows and power.
Exactly. And the third camp focuses entirely on its dark and literary merits, commending the depth of the poetic prose and how intelligently it explores themes of identity and existential dread.
It's incredibly rare to see a single novel satisfy all 3 of those demographics. Usually, if a book caters to the adrenaline junkie reader who wants high-octane international conspiracies, it completely sacrifices the literary depth.
Yeah, the explosions sort of drown out the philosophy.
Right. And conversely, highly literary character studies often lack the narrative momentum of a spy thriller. But here they seem deeply intertwined. And I should note, the book does carry a warning for mature themes and intense scenes.
This raises an important question about what audiences want right now. But that warning makes perfect sense when you consider the psychological descent we've been discussing. If you are going to explore the true, unfettered reality of power, the scenes have to reflect the intensity of that moral decay.
It can't be sanitized.
Right. The violence or the intensity isn't there for hollow entertainment. It's the inevitable consequence of a mind breaking its own boundaries.
It seems like these reviews are signaling a real shift in what modern audiences are craving. We've seen every explosion, every car chase, and every secret agent shootout imaginable. Readers want the adrenaline, sure, but they want the internal car chase too. They want consequence.
Consequence is exactly what elevates a thriller from a basic beach read to something that lingers with you. The Man Who Vanished succeeds because it absolutely refuses to choose between genre thrills and literary ambition.
It does both.
Yeah. The invisibility is merely the catalyst. It's the mechanism that forces the protagonist, and by extension the reader, to strip away all the performative layers of society and confront the raw, often terrifying reality of human nature when literally no one is watching.
It has been a massive journey unpacking this today. We started with a mythological Egyptian fruit that grants terrifying freedom and explored how the sudden absence of social consequence acts as a moral acid test, rotting liberation right into compulsion.
We analyzed the brilliant mechanical choice to use scent as the primary narrative vehicle, too, which allows the author to cross physical boundaries and build claustrophobic tension without ever offering a visual target.
And we traced all of that back to Cassandra, who synthesized his deep understanding of telecommunications surveillance with the rhythmic, haunting pulse of classical Arabic poetry. It's a powerful reminder of how bringing wildly diverse professional and cultural perspectives to a familiar genre can completely revitalize it.
It really proves that a thriller doesn't have to be a mindless escape. It can entertain you while systematically dismantling your assumptions about your own morality.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to you listening to this. We've spent this entire deep dive exploring the psychology of an invisible character navigating a fictional underworld. But Jawar's background in digital systems grounds this highly philosophical story in our immediate reality.
We live in an era where true anonymity is effectively dead. Your digital footprint is tracked continuously. Every click, every commute, every transaction is logged by the very telecom architectures Jawar understands so intimately. You are always, in some way, being observed.
Yeah, it's unavoidable.
But imagine if you weren't. Imagine if, like the protagonist, you suddenly slipped completely off every radar, both physical and digital. The novel explores the terrifying path the protagonist takes with that power. But the real question is for you. If there were truly no consequences, no surveillance, and no one to ever witness your actions, what is the first rule you would break, and would you ever be able to stop?